So welcome to the Deal Finder Corner. So this is your weekly property talk show brought to you by Property Filter, hosted by myself, Guillaume Black. I'm your favorite Frenchman, the CEO and co-founder at Property Filter. It's the UK's highest rated platform to find deals, and we're on a mission to empower our property investors and deal sourcer members to find another 1,000 deals this year thanks to the Property Filter blueprint. And really the purpose with this Deal Finder Corner is to give you more and the best of the available resources by inviting expert guests who will share with you the latest and most current strategies, tactics, and secrets about what actually works right now in terms of finding and making deals and the reality of systemizing and running a high-performance business in property. So it really is my immense pleasure today to introduce you to my very good friend, Hayley Andrews, on today's Deal Finder Corner. So Hayley was the CEO of several companies. She's a portfolio landlord. She's been investing since 2002. I don't want to say since so many years, but since 2002. Adopting to many different strategies, so rating from buy-to-let, service accommodation, HMO, commercial, distressed properties, development, lease options, rent-to-rent, listed buildings, and car parks. And I'm sure I'm running out of fingers to count all the stuff she's doing. She also is a global property mentor, an international speaker, a regular expert invited on Sky TV, an angel on the hit series, the Sky TV program Property Elevator, the founder of Hard Hats to Heels, a female networking group, the Freedom Empire Global Property and Business Training Organization. So she owns and runs with her husband the Freedom Empire. She owns estates and letting agencies alongside the sourcing division of 42 agents UK-wide. And she's been named one of the UK's most inspirational female entrepreneur. She's a board member of the Mercian Trust Group, a trustee of 3 historical building trusts, a governor, a chair, a trustee across different entities. So, you know, like really lots going on. And also, Hayley's been a real property and data geek and a true Property Filter friend. So we're really grateful to count Hayley as one of our earliest supporter. And yeah, she's really been cheering us on the sideline, you know, on our mission to make finding deals more accessible and predictable, and really since the early days. So I'm really happy and excited to have Hayley today on the Deal Finder Corner. So what can you expect from today? So Hayley will draw your motivation from, you know, sharing a path to success, inspiring you to do things in property, you know, in your own property career. She'll talk about flexibility and openness and on how you can discover value and adapt, you know, across a diverse range of strategies, you know, to great success. And in the same thing, learn how to elevate, you know, and learn how to evaluate deals differently by leaving the, you know, the ego at the door, going past the ego to uncover hidden potentials in deals, you know, where sometimes we want to throw our own strategies and ways on deals, and there's a more open way to do that, and she's going to share a secret about that. And so I'm very much looking forward to hearing more on Hayley's talks today. So please give a massive Property Filter virtual welcome to Mrs. Hayley Andrews. Thank you so much.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Gilliam. I've got to say, I never ever get tired of hearing you pronounce my name. It's like music to my ears. But no, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I was going to talk a little bit about myself, but I don't think I really need to do that now. We've just saved 10 minutes. But no, I'm really thrilled and excited to be here today, and it's great to obviously speak to your audience. And I am a massive fan of Property Filter, Property Elevator too, of course, and have watched you grow right from the very beginning, and think it's a fabulous platform. So all of you guys obviously agree you're here today, but hopefully what I'm going to share with you is something a little bit different. Some of you on the call, I know that Jeannie's seen some of my presentations before. There'll be some repetition, Jeannie, but she is one of the co-founders of Hard Hats to Heels, and she's supporting me as a female today, I think. Is that right, Jeannie? There you go. Brilliant. So I'm going to talk about Hard Hats to Heels a little bit later on, but really I'm going to go through an agenda with you first and foremost. If my slides can actually move, bear with me. Hate it when it gives you that sound and it doesn't move. So really what I'm going to talk to you today about is I'm going to give you a short introduction to myself, just in addition to what Gilliam has already spoken about. My background and why I do what I do, how I got started as well. So right back at the very beginning, what motivated me to move into property, and why I'm still in it to this day. Life and overcoming challenges. Everyone has challenges within their life. I've had an awful lot in mine, and life really does just hit you in the head sometimes, and you have to kind of pick yourself up and move on. And it's about those decisions that we make to move ourselves forward and to pull ourselves forward and to take control of our life. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Then how I scaled my business also, what motivated me to move from your standard residential homes into larger commercial buildings and development and car parks and all of the other things that Gilliam listed off there at the beginning. And again, what motivates me around those strategies as well. There's method in everything I do. Everything I do is very intentional, and hopefully that will come through within the presentation. Reflecting back as well, I find this one quite difficult actually, because I'm always a forward moving person, and I believe the past is the past. Everything happens for a reason, and actually everything that has happened, both good and bad, within my career and my life has had meaning and motivated me in different ways. But really this section is about what would I do differently if I could start again, and sharing that with you, and hopefully some of you, if you're just starting out, that might drop a little seed in your head to maybe approach things slightly differently, and have those values for your time, etc. I'll talk to you a little bit about my portfolio today and some of the projects I'm working on, but really where the focus is going to be today, where I'll spend most of the time, is some of the projects that I've done, and the way I approach projects. A lot of the projects that I do, most developers, most investors have walked away from, it's really about identifying the opportunity, and I'm very good at that, and really seeing riches where others see rags. Majority of the money that I make and the portfolio that I hold is doing that, solving problems, and not really being an egotistical person. I'm not an Instagram worthy person. I don't care about what other people really think. I care about making money, and I produce a product for that audience. So it's about that, and really the problems that I've solved and the money I've made out of solving those problems, and the projects that I've put forward to discuss on today's Zoom is really projects that anyone could do. So they're not my biggest projects. They're not, most certainly not my smallest projects. They're projects that absolutely anyone could do and could have done, but opportunities were missed because recognizing the opportunity wasn't there with most investors. And then really, I am also, so I'm so many different things, qualified in so many different things. I wear so many different hats, and it's really just highlighting some of the other things I do. Majority of the stuff is property related, but some of it outside of property, investing in other businesses and the TV stuff and things like that that I'm part of. And of course, our new female property networking group, which was a phenomenal success with our launch, and just the motivation behind that as well. And then I'm open to question and answers. So yes, hopefully we get through it in time, but I am told I've got as much time as I want. Is that true, Gilliam? Thank you. Right. So Gilliam's already done a wonderful introduction. I am very heavily involved in real estate across both management companies, sourcing platform, education, construction companies, on several different trusts, networking, TV programs. But really, I started out in 2002. I've done most strategies So I've done buy-to-lets, HMOs, lease options, lots of different creative ways as well. Had to kind of do that in the beginning, just to be able to service contracts, etc., that I'd got, and also to get cash flow very quickly. And I'll go into that a little bit more. But distress development, car parks is a new one for me, yeah, pretty much everything else in between. I am a jack of all trades, and I do have my fingers in a lot of pies. I genuinely love the industry that we are in, and I work harder than I've ever worked in a job. I haven't been employable for a very long time, and I haven't been employed for a very long time. So property is what I do day in, day out, and across all of these different companies. So how did I get started? I talk about this quite often, and I always say that I'd love to give you an inspirational story, but unfortunately I don't have one. Um, However, hopefully you'll find inspiration in what I talk about. But really, I never really had any desire to move into property. I was a bit of a control freak. Couldn't really take instruction from people. Knew that I needed to be in control of myself, my income, etc. I was a bit of a rebel at school. I didn't really enjoy school, although I really loved learning. So while I did okay, and I passed all of my GCSEs, etc., and got really good grades, I found it very boring, and it wasn't really the type of education that I wanted to be involved in. I get bored extremely quickly. So and I've always been entrepreneurial as well. I've always had kind of side hustles on, even at school. And Jeannie will know this story. Half the time I got my registration mark, jumped over the wall, spent the rest of the day selling cigarettes for 25p. That was kind of who I was. So I was always a bit of a rebel, always kind of knew that I'd need to do something for myself. But what that was going to be wasn't really visible at that moment in time. I just knew that I'd got this flair about me, and this rebel inside me that no one could really control. Um, so I met my husband at 16, fell in love at first sight. He's still my husband today, although I always say to him that if I'd have murdered him, I'd have been out of jail by now, which is true story. But really, how I got started in property was I was always jumping into one job to the next. I was super employable. I got all of the qualifications and I got the right skill sets. I was in the leisure and tourism industry because I'm a data freak, and I used to study the movement of people and present information on where hotels, etc., should be opening up in an area, why, what's driving short-term accommodation in those areas. Hence why I've kind of moved into that arena with my investment portfolio as well. But I never really stayed anywhere very long. 12 months tops. I was bored. I got what I needed from that job. I grew as an individual, and then I wanted to move on to push myself and pull myself forward. So I never had a pension or anything like that. So really very young, I knew I'd need to do something to secure kind of my future, and a pension pot. So how I got started was I come from a council estate. I'm one of seven. My mom purchased her council home. We never really had much, single parent as well. So I was always quite frugal. I was on really good income. So was my husband as well. So I purchased my own home, and he had a bigger house than me. When we decided to move in together, I rented my property out and became an accidental landlord. So that's how I kind of started. Is there any other hands up if you're an accidental landlord in the room? We'll have a quick virtual hands up. We got any? I can't see everyone. Let's have a look. No accidental landlords. Okay, that's a
Yeah, there's a
first.
few. You've got a few
Oh,
hands up and a few.
oh, is it a few?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a few.
So
Thanks, guys.
thank you. There's my inspirational story. So I was an accidental landlord. So rather than selling my property because I was fiercely independent and always kind of wanted that security blanket, I've never really relied on anyone and always kind of wanted to take control of my own life. And while I'm still with my husband to this day, obviously didn't know that at the time, and you never know what life's going to throw at you. So I retained my property and rented it out, and I was hooked from there really. So after that, I decided that I would buy another one and another one, and again I was on really good income, so we were just saving money. And the idea was that our buy-to-let portfolio would become our pension pot. So we were paying the mortgages down. They wasn't really cash flowing or cash flowing very little. But the idea around it was to pay the mortgages over a 25-year period and then retire off the income or sell that portfolio when we wanted to retire. And that's what we did. And I did that for a good few years. I built up a really good sized portfolio. We were super mortgageable. We had no problem in getting finance because of the income that we had. And I thought that we'd made it. We got a very good sized portfolio. We were paying the mortgages down. Although we didn't really have cash flow, we got these assets that were appreciating year on year. There was absolutely nothing creative about how I got started. And anybody could have done it. So I don't necessarily consider that as part of my professional side of my journey. It was really, I was very good at saving money and knew that property was a good tangible asset, and that was my pension pot. Well, this was all very well and good until it wasn't. So my husband became very poorly. So we almost lost him, and he had to have brain surgery and all things like that. Now, because he was a self-employed Oracle developer at the time, we lost his income overnight. He was on over £100,000, so it's quite a bit of a knock. And of course, because I had to take care of him, I had to reduce my hours as well. So I wasn't able to work as many hours as I was. So my income was reduced as well. So we lost a hell of a lot of money pretty much overnight. And that's when we kind of realized that while we were asset rich, in reality, we were cash poor. So we didn't have any income coming off that portfolio, or very little. And unless we were working, we couldn't continue the lifestyle that we'd created or that we're living. So we decided that we had to do something about it. And that's when we decided to kind of get educated. So turn away if you are actually squeamish. But this is my husband on screen now. And it was really overcoming these challenges which propelled us into doing property professionally. And the idea around it originally was to create cash flow very quickly. So again, show of hands, if you've read the likes of Rich Dad Poor Dad, I'm pretty sure most people have. So I read that book, and I decided to, yeah, lots of people with their hands up. I decided to get myself educated. So we did the Rich Dad Poor Dad training with America. Very, very good training, really enjoyed it. And really what that highlighted to me was that while I owned assets, I wasn't an investor, and I wasn't buying right, or I wasn't really being creative or leveraging properly and all things like that, but also all of the different strategies that you could adopt. And then once I realized what we could actually do with our portfolio and all of the different strategies, we decided to then jump into HMOs. Because that cash flow was what we were looking for. Here's a few pictures just of us on the journey. And this is part way through as well. So there's a mixture of pictures there. You can see it's very much a family affair. The keys is on there because they became the bane of my life. I absolutely hate keys. So when I'm talking to you a little bit later on about what I would do differently, definitely master key systems or digital lock-in systems, which were not really around so much then. The master key systems, yes, absolutely. But the digital locking is really, the last 10 years. Definitely one of the things I would change is getting a better key system in place for all of you properties. But really, we moved into HMOs and we landed a contract actually with a recruitment company for the NHS. So they were providing employment and accommodation. So I was raising finance, angel finance. I was using credit cards. And some of you that are older in the room may have done this yourself, where you're kind of like transferring debt from credit card to credit card in the beginning. This was many years ago. You can't really do that now, but really raising your credit and leveraging that way, putting all of the refurbishments and things like that on your credit card on interest only for 18 months, which were the good old days, but way too much unsecured debt. Again, another thing that I wouldn't recommend, and did actually trip me up partway through my journey. But we started doing HMOs, and obviously we landed this contract. And while I was able to raise finance, I wasn't actually able to turn the properties around quick enough. So rent to rent was born, really. And I started going out networking, speaking to landlords to try and find landlords that were willing to work with me and allow me to run their properties as HMOs, so that we could service this contract that we had, because I simply couldn't buy and refurbish and get that properties or those properties in a lettable state quick enough. So then we moved and continued with HMOs, but then obviously I get bored very easily. Once I've mastered a strategy, I really want to then move forward and see what I can do next. So when cash flow really wasn't an issue anymore, what we then started to do was look at the business and really see how we could systemize that business. Again, another big mistake is I learned everything about property and I implemented all of the strategies, but I didn't really learn about business. So then I grew very quickly and had this monster of a business that I then had to try and systemize and go back to the beginning and really get everything into place and start again. So we moved from HMOs once we got the cash flow. I still do HMOs to this day, just not on a large scale. In our first year of doing training, we did 15 HMOs, and we were doing buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and then doing our rent to rent portfolio alongside that to service this contract that we had as well. In the beginning, I was self-managing as well, which I do think that that was a big mistake. I self-managed my buy-to-let portfolio prior to any education around my full-time job. And didn't really take up too much time. They were just standard residential homes with families in there. So it was fairly easy to manage. But then I stupidly thought, well, we're focusing on cash flow, therefore I'll continue to manage my HMO portfolio. But we grew so quickly, and it's a completely different animal altogether, that it actually ended up becoming a full-time job just managing. I was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, going out to properties where the police have been called, alarms are going off, and all things like that. So I created a job and ended up working harder than I'd ever worked in a job, which wasn't really what I was looking to do. This for me was always about freedom of time, and our initial kind of goals were to get to that cash flow figure, be comfortable, and then have that freedom to do what we wanted with that time. Unfortunately, or fortunately for my business, what I did with that time was just buy more and more and more and more. So it is a bit addictive, I would say, and maybe I should speak to my therapist about that. But I absolutely love doing what we're doing. So once cash flow wasn't an issue, then I had this choice. I could choose what I wanted to do. And I started becoming, there was a lot more competition coming into the market for residential, with a lot more people looking to convert residential homes into HMOs, etc. So in the market that I was playing in, which was, a total budget of around £250,000 for your 2 to 4 bedroom terraced houses, and semi-detached. That was really what I was focusing on in the beginning. And doing the conversions into 4 to 6 person HMOs. But there was a hell of a lot of competition there. So really what I started then looking at, well, if I've got to compete, then I can't buy as well. If I'm competing with a mass audience and we've got multiple people negotiating on deals, how can I get around that? So really what I started doing then was focusing on problem properties. And I started moving from your smaller residential homes to your larger commercial units and almost built to rent. So converting factories, etc., into larger HMOs, cluster flats, studio apartments, serviced accommodation, and also doing commercial and asset management as well, which I really enjoy. Lots of people ask me, if you had to choose between, residential or commercial, which one would you choose? And it's a really hard question because residential really, I make a hell of a lot of money out of doing residential developments, conversions, etc. I don't really do too much of the single houses now or smaller HMOs where we're converting residential homes into 4 and 6 beds. I build to rent and do those cluster flats, etc. But while I make a hell of a lot of money out of residential, I do think commercial is less hands-on, I guess. So once you've found a good tenant in your commercial properties, and yes, that may take a little bit longer to get the right tenants in place. You're on an FRI lease and your tenants are in there for 5 to 10 years and they're fully responsible for the building. So I actually do, I can't answer the question, I never can. But yes, I guess it depends on how hands-on or off you want to be, and what you're looking to achieve, obviously, with your own investment portfolio. So we moved into the larger stuff, and that's when I started focusing on, listed buildings, properties with covenants on them, properties with enforcement notices, planning permissions that have been refused, development sites that had part finished or had gone bust. And that's where I really started making good money. So reflecting back now, across my portfolio, I do own, commercial schools. I've even got a museum, and I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit later on when I talk to you about some deals. But reflecting back, I've written down some of these things. I think the biggest mistake I made in the beginning was I am a doer. I project managed, I sourced materials, I stripped walls, I filled skips, I knocked walls down. That was quite fun, actually. I'm pretty decent with a power tool, and I've got several videos to prove that as well. Might share them with you at a later date. Maybe check out my Instagram page. I'm sure there's some on there. But I was really hands-on. So not only was I sourcing the opportunity myself, creating those relationships, doing the negotiation, which is one of my favorite things to do. I'm very good at negotiating good, solid, below market value deals. And I always make my money in the buy. I know it sounds corny, but it is a must, and it gives you options. So I was very good at doing that. But I was doing that alongside then the schedule of works, the project management, bringing the trades on board, then to letting the properties out, managing the tenants. So I created this kind of monster, which was why I had to step back and say, oh, okay, this was about time. And while I was making good returns on my money, I wasn't making good return on my time, and I wasn't actually focusing where my strengths were, which is finding the opportunity, recognizing that opportunity, negotiating that deal, and project managing that, which is a part that I really enjoy. So reflecting back, I would say value my time. There is an opportunity cost, and I never really recognized that in the beginning because money was an issue. Obviously, I wanted to get to those cash flow figures and smash my goals as quickly as I possibly could. And I never recognized that there was that cost to my time as well. So, stripping walls was not really what I should have been doing. However, I do think it gave me a great level of respect for everyone within my team, and some of them still within my team to this day, because I do understand and have done every single one of their jobs. So I think as someone looking back, it's easy for you to look back and say, but I'm very much about living forward. So I never regret anything that I do. I genuinely do think everything happens for a reason. But if I was to start again, I definitely recognize that it is not only about return on money, it is also about return on time equally, and equally as important. I'd celebrate the wins more. So I'm one of these people that, and I could probably still, I don't need to reflect back on this. I'm still guilty of this today. So I do, and that's what I do. I get shit done. That should be my logo. I'm not very good at talking about stuff, but I'm very, very good about doing it. And I move on. So once I've completed something, I've already started something else. And I quite often have multiple projects on at any one time. So celebrating one when it's finished is not something that I've really been very good at. So reflecting back, and maybe a note to myself moving forward, take a little bit of time to celebrate the wins that you have, and really say, do you know what, Hayley, or Jeannie, or anybody else that's on the call, you did a good job. You smashed it, you hit your goal, have a glass of champagne. I've got about 60 bottles of champagne at my house, and I've never opened one of them. I'm a nightmare. So maybe we could open them all at the same time. Maybe that's our next Hard Hats to Heels. Although they're not cheap champagne either, so I'm not entirely sure we should do that. But yeah, definitely value your time, but celebrate the wins, because it is hard. It's a difficult industry to be in. It's one of the best industries to be in. It's the only industry that's ever kept me interested for as long as it has. I'm qualified in so many different things, because I love learning. I like to challenge myself. I'm never inside my comfort zone. I don't know what comfort feels like. And that's not because I'm not comfortable with being comfortable. It's just that once I'm at a stage where I'm confident about something, then the next progression is to push myself outside of my comfort zone to continue growing as an individual. So I'm very self-motivated, and I do hold myself accountable. So never self-manage is definitely one that I would put down there. I have lots of people that come through that are just starting out. And yes, I see the benefits around self-managing in the beginning, but really start as you mean to go on, and recognize that that is a job in itself. And most people that are starting out would do this around their full-time job. And if they're not doing it around their full-time job and they're doing this as their career, there is opportunity costs there, and you don't want to be wasting your time on managing your assets when you can outsource that. So always calculate that as part of your deals when you're moving into the industry or growing your portfolio, even if you have the intention short term to kind of do that self-management, just to get your foot under the door and a bit of experience in how it happens. But always make sure you have that option from your cash flow point of view and the viability of the deal to outsource that at some point. point in the future, or when you decide that property management is the worst side of the industry to be in. Definitely wouldn't do that again. Another one would be don't over leverage. So in the beginning, when I say beginning, after I got educated, I don't really class the first part, the first few years really, where I was buying buy-to-let properties as my investment journey, because anyone can buy properties if they've got money. You don't need to be anything special. As long as you can get a mortgage and you can put a tenant in there, then you don't really need to have any special level of education or anything like that to do the standard buy-to-let. So I don't really class that side of it as my investment journey. But when I started moving into buying the residential homes, doing them up, they were distressed, we were converting them into HMOs, 4 to 6 beds. We were always looking at leveraging at the highest level we possibly could, because we were recycling our capital, and needed to as well, because we were using angel investors' money, we were using our credit cards for refurbishments, and of course we needed to recycle that capital to move on to the next one. But there was a point where we were over leveraging, and that will come and bite you in the bum, especially when you start going into the realms of being, well, after you've done 3 or 4 properties, you're classed as a portfolio landlord. So I was classed as a portfolio landlord before I even moved into HMOs. And back then we brought everything in our own personal name as well. So very different to how we would do it today. But yes, definitely don't over leverage or have too much unsecured debt. While it's great to play that credit card game, you will have to pay it off at some point, and gone are the days where you got interest only for 18 months. I'd say as well, always start with the end in mind, so and work backwards. So have your goal, but don't be tunnel vision on the path. The path will change, your desire will change, your appetite for risk will change. You will just get better at doing what you're doing, and that's great. You want to learn new strategies, move into different areas, maybe JV with different partners. So your path is always going to be different. So I'd always say don't be tunnel visioned and focused on one strategy. Very much my ethos is understand the fundamentals of all, and then you have options, and it will allow you then to obviously assess the deal with a different vision and a different view. Buy right, always make sure that you are making your money in the buy. And I know that you've probably heard this a million times already, but it's absolutely true. If you buy right, and that comes down to negotiation, recognizing the opportunity, getting rid of the competition, being good at what you do, which is invest in property, then you will always have options. The only time that you won't have options with property is if you're paying too much money on the initial purchase. Learn business, I've already said that. So, if you're just starting out, or even if you're in the business and you may be thinking, do you know what, I've got a portfolio here, maybe got 15, 20 properties, and it's starting to become a full-time job, taking care of all of those properties, etc., and even just being accountable. So even if the management is outsourced, there's still a level of involvement. This business is not passive, and anyone that tells you otherwise is a liar or not actively doing it. So as I said, I work harder now than I ever have, but I do have that choice. So it's as passive as it can be. This business is all about relationships as any other, and every single deal that I've done that's been a slam dunk deal has come down to relationships that I've built within the areas, with local councillors, the planning department, heritage. There's a reason I sit on several boards. There's a reason I volunteer my time, and there's a reason I sit on several wards. you have to become part of that community and be the go-to person, and really build those relationships. And you're only going to do that by connecting with people, networking, reaching out to your local council, understanding, the plan, the local council plan. And working with them and seeing what opportunities you can identify and how you can purchase them below market value. A lot of the buildings I buy are from the council. And then the other thing I would say is, don't measure yourself by other people. This is your journey. And it's so easy in this day and age. It's a little bit that I'm old and I've been doing it a long time. I think Facebook might actually, when did Facebook come out? Was it 2008? So I was even doing it before Facebook. It was a little bit less kind of all about what you were doing then, and you just got on and did it. And I think a lot of people get caught up in putting those Instagram worthy properties forward, doing videos every single day, posting every single day. And there's definitely value in doing that, but it shouldn't retract from the business at hand. You are supposed to be building your property portfolio, building your wealth either for yourself or for your investors if you're sourcing agents. And if you are constantly trying to chase every single like and compete with the Instagram worthy accommodation that you see, quite often they're not making much money out of it and they're not recognizing the opportunity at hand. So I'd just say, don't measure yourself by other people. Stay in your own lane, start with the end in mind, have your goal, stay open-minded, and just get on and do it. Showing up is half of the job done, and hold yourself accountable. There's going to be bad days, lots of them. I've had an entire bad week as a professional that's been doing it for a really long time. Still putting out fires to this day. But it's one of the things I absolutely love about it, solving problems. So I've got so many others that I could probably talk to you about, but we'll just look at that as we move along. So with this now, what I wanted to kind of highlight is, while most people will avoid problems, I actively go out looking for them. So I will look for properties that didn't sell in auction or on the open market. I'll look for properties that have issues with them, covenants, planning permission declined, building sites that have come to a halt, liquidations and all things like that. I actually do like solving problems, and I would genuinely say that the reason I make money out of property is because I'm very good at solving problems. So I would always say, maybe try finding the problems instead of avoiding them, because while most people will avoid the problems, like listed buildings, minefields, but if you know what you're doing, actually very, very good strategy to focus on. Lots of grant funding available, lots of money available through several different funds as well, and can be a real good asset class for you to hold on to. So I look for things that most people would avoid, I guess, and I'll show you a few examples of those in a minute. So I'm going to show you some of my favorite projects, and this is where I've seen kind of riches where other people have seen rags. So some of the areas I invest in and have been investing in for, some of them over 17 years. This particular area I'm going to talk to you about now for over 15 years. Many people have said to me, why on earth would you be investing there? I'd understand their point. But one of the things I'd like to kind of it's not about buying, it's about buying in the right areas, but it's about identifying the opportunity within that area, the town plan, understanding regeneration, the money that's available to you, and can you solve the problems, for the buildings or the people that hold them. It doesn't always have to be a distressed property. It can be, and quite often is, a distressed situation. So I'm going to show you a few of those, and I'll take any questions that you've got on them at the end as well. I'm going to move this out of the way. So this one's Parson Street. So this was a distress situation, actually. It was a distressed property as well. So there's lots of legal issues and things like that around this property. So this was a factory. So an investor had purchased this on a bridging loan. They'd part finished it, but this is in a conservation area. This particular building isn't listed, but it is in a conservation area. They'd done most of the work, but they hadn't finished it off, or there was parts of it that was finished, but parts that were still needing to be done. So they'd done a hell of a lot of work on this, but there was an enforcement notice on this property. So it was for cash purchase only, really, or bridge. So the competition, there wasn't that many people in this particular area that had this type of money available. So I negotiated this property down. The property, as I said, wasn't completed. The developer had fallen on hard times financially, was on a bridging loan that he was supposed to be paying back. It was weeks, so it wasn't even months. And he was really distressed situation. So I created a win-win by taking the property off him for £720,000, which cleared his bridge. So he did lose money, but he didn't have bad credit and things like that as a result of it. He was happy to walk away with that amount and really just solve the problem that he'd created. The enforcement notice was on this property because it is in a conservation area, and he had put plastic PVC windows in, and he'd fallen out with the council, and of course with an enforcement on there it wasn't mortgageable, and he couldn't exit from his bridging loan, and he didn't have the money to correct the problems. But he'd also rented out some of the property as well to undesirable tenants, wasn't on the correct contracts and things like that. And I'd say 50% of them shouldn't have been living there because it wasn't finished. But secondly, possibly shouldn't have been in the country either. It was a bit of a legal nightmare. So how I actually solved this problem was I replaced all of the windows. I completed the project. It cost me £200,000 to complete the project. Bearing in mind this was about 10 years ago, so it's probably double that now. But fairly low amount of money to put into completing the project, but getting the enforcement removed, relocating the tenants and paying some of them off to just move on, basically. But the rental income on this property was just under £160,000, and the property was valued at just under 1.6 million. And so it was a really good deal, and it was down to a distress situation. And as I said, most investors walked away from this because they wasn't prepared or didn't see how they could solve the problem. So if you can solve problems, as I always say, you can make money. Who would do this deal, by the way? Yeah. Brilliant. I should come and source for you, shouldn't I, Gilliam? I think that would be good. Right. Whenever I move this, I can't actually see, so bear with me. So this one, again, was another problem. All of these properties are problems, but the reason I'm showing them to you is because every single one of them, any one of you could have done. So this one, actually, John Howard sourced to me. Does anybody know John Howard in the room? No?
Yeah, I've met him twice.
Yeah, brilliant. And so you know that John's a dealer. He loves his deals. He actually sourced this property to me. Although it is actually on my doorstep, and I do have a joke with him because he sent me a Rightmove link through basically, and then tried to charge me 2% for it. I joke with him to this day. He's a very good friend of mine. I discounted that by 50% and paid him 1%, but I made a hell of a lot of money out of this deal. And it was a very good asset management deal. And then I recognized an opportunity that most people missed. So this property here is in a conservation area. It's both, I don't know whether you can see my mouse, but you've got the white building here, and then you've got the brambles building at the back, which is combined. So it is that entire, both of those buildings together. So this was offices. Now this building I actually know. So it is a grade 2 listed building. The Heritage Trust that I work with and the National Lottery Heritage Fund had restored this building a few years before. So I knew how much money had been spent on this building, and I knew that it was done to a really good standard, and everything was done and ready to go, basically. It's an absolutely stunning building inside. I actually am buying a shopping centre and around the corner, and this building was fit for purpose for a school. So I originally purchased it because Eton College were coming to Dudley, and I wanted this to be their preferred site. They're actually building one around the corner now, so I missed out on that. But I put Skills Training UK into this building, which is a £25 million turnover school for challenged children and apprenticeships and things like that. So you hire education, your 16 to 19-year-olds, really naughty children. Kind of resonated with me a little bit because that's exactly what I was. So I teach these children now as well, which is a really nice place to be. But I'd recognized that their lease was coming to an end because I was buying the offices that above the shopping centre that they were occupying at the time. So I renegotiated with them and got them to take a lease on this. So it was a clear asset management, no-brainer really. Even just with the lease and the strength of the lease and the tenants, I would have made money out of this property. But everybody that looked at this property, you can see there's a car park at the side there, and that actually doubles again at the bottom. And then there's one at the top as well. So there's 3 car parks to this building. But every single estate agent that marketed this property went into liquidation, marketed it as a development opportunity. Now, this building is, as I said, grade 2 listed. The castle is just behind it, and there's protected views of the castle. It's opposite the council house. There was no way you were ever going to get a planning permission to develop the land on this building. And it really didn't stack as a residential, a commercial to residential conversion, because the prices are really quite low. It will not high enough in this area to warrant that type of strategy on a property at £880,000. So what I actually did is I did a feasibility report on what I could do with this car park. I've given it away now. What I could do with this land at the side. So we went out to the market traders, local businesses. We went out to the public, asked them, we recognised that parking was an issue locally, and that a pay and display car park would work really well. We spoke to some providers to understand the business model. It was the first car park I'd ever done, so I'd not really looked into it at that point, but we recognised that the opportunity here was the car park and the pay and display. So I'd obviously protected my downside by securing the tenant up front, and I did that as part of the purchase, so I was able to actually run that hand in hand. And then we did a light refurb, but it was nothing too expensive. In actual fact, Skills Training UK paid to make the property fit for purpose by partitioning and things like that, decorating it to their colour scheme, of which I helped and project managed, but they put up the majority of the funding. So I spent, it's £190,000 there, but I actually didn't spend £190,000. That was the total spend with what they did and what I did as well. But the real icing on the cake with this one, and why most people walked away, is because they didn't look at the opportunity. They were so fixed on commercial to residential or development alone that they didn't actually think about, well, what else could it be? And I really do think that that's where I strive. The car park alone on this property earns me £6,000 a month. alone, and that was in addition, of course, to the rental income. So this property produces £196,000. And it was valued at 1.962. And we did get a vacant possession value, despite the fact that it was a good solid tenant with a 25 million turnover. But we got a vacant possession value of 1.8. So I actually pulled out a couple of hundred, well, it's about £180,000 from this deal. I retained this asset. It cash flows very handsomely. And I've got the additional bonus of the £6,000 per month for the car park, which is absolutely packed day in, day out. Has anybody ever done car parks before? No? Well, me neither until I did this one. But this is the beauty of actually looking at, well, what does the area need? Because if you can recognize what the area needs, you can see opportunity where other people don't. Most people walked away from this because they knew after a little bit of digging, they wouldn't be able to get a development on that car park. And alone, the building wouldn't have stacked up as a commercial to residential. It's not really a resale value, it's a rental area. But the reason I invest in these areas is the regeneration, the money available. I knew this building very well. I negotiated it at a really good price. And of course, there was that additional added bonus of the car park as well, of which would have worked without it. But that's why I could pay the 880. I did put an unconditional offer on this and I completed within 4 weeks. So, you know, I had to show proof of funds. So you've always got to be in a position where you're showing that you're professional. And by showing those proof of funds and making, you know, unconditional offers, if you're confident in what you're doing and you know what you're doing, it really puts you in a strong position, because there were a lot of people sniffing around this at the time, just for the commercial element to retain it or have it as their own premises. So it ended up being a really good deal. This one here was a bank. I say it was a bank. It was a bank, and all of the vaults and everything were still there, but it actually got office classification. So it had been rented out of offices, but it'd been derelict for 10 years or so. Now, this particular building looked like something out of the Jumanji movie. Has anyone seen that movie? Yeah, it was awful. In actual fact, to even get up the staircase, you can see it's all rotten here. This was just falling. So you got the cellar underneath here, and the staircase was just falling. So we had to have like acro props, but even the surveyor and that wouldn't go up there. I had to climb up there on the banister to go and view this property. It was, yeah, my gymnastic days definitely came in handy that day. Yeah, this was a property that was purchased by, again, another investor. I believe they purchased it in auction. They paid too much money for it. I definitely paid too much money for it, but this was brought to me by the council. So I work quite closely with Heritage and the council in various different areas, but in this area, I do own a very large portfolio, and I've restored and developed lots of buildings. So they actually brought this to me and asked if I would buy it. Now, the reason this kept jumping in and out of auction and wouldn't sell is because the seller wanted too much money for it. It was worth maybe £103,000. And so I genuinely believe I did pay £100,000 too much. However, I knew something that they didn't. So when the council brought this to me, they actually offered me grant funding to do the entire phase one, which was make the property structurally sound, watertight. There were a lot of issues. You can see there's trees growing through the wall there. There were a lot of structural issues. There was part of the building that was falling down. There was no roof on the back end. It had had water ingress over a long period of time. There was damp issues as well. Just here above, this was something we didn't anticipate, but just here above the, would have originally been a shop window because there was a shutter there. But there was actually timber lint, so a support across here that was completely rotten, but it was all found afterwards, and it was in holding the entire front of that building up. How it was still standing. Now, this particular building would have been much better just knocking it down. And without the grant funding, I wouldn't have done this deal. When they brought it to me, they said, Hayley, would you buy it? I said, absolutely not, when I saw it. Because everything that could have gone wrong with this building absolutely did. It was a complete nightmare. But it ended up being a really good deal. But I was happy to do the building because it was on the high street. It's part of an area that I'm heavily invested in again. And the council wanted to obviously offer this grant money, and there was no restriction on or the title or anything like that. So if I wanted to sell it, I didn't have to pay them back, or if I wanted to retain it, or there was nothing that was going to affect my lending capability, which it can if you're using grant funding. So we actually went with Signature, who were a fabulous bridging company, Bridge to Development Finance, with this building. And then we exited with Shawbrook. So this now produces £90,000 a year, and it had a valuation of £900,000, but the total project cost, as you can see, was 510. So there was a lot of problems that we had to solve with this particular building. And this is what it looks like now. But while I wouldn't have done the deal, I ended up leaving about £30,000 in if I'd have done the deal without the grant funding. Admittedly, as well, with the grant funding, I've got to say the projects do take longer, and they are more expensive to do because of the hoops that you have to jump through and the processes you have to follow. All processes we would usually follow within our developments, but everything just takes that a little bit longer, and you are paid in arrears as well. So we actually got £320,000 grant funding on that. So we ended up pulling quite a bit of money out, as well as, of course, restoring a beautiful building that is fully tenanted, and definitely made a difference to the high street. But again, just focusing on the problems, this property had been sat empty for a really long time. The children were breaking into it. They were doing drugs in there, and you got them setting parts of it on fire and all things like that. So it came down to the relationship with the council, and mainly the heritage as well, the work that I do on the heritage side, on the different trusts, and with the heritage officers that are local as well, on many listed buildings that I've restored, and they wanted me to restore that, which was why that money was available. So again, it comes down to relationships, and there is a reason I actually sit on the boards, and you know, everything I do is very intentional. And as I said, it is a business at the end of the day, and I'm in it to make money. And the better the relationships and connections that you have, the better deals that you will get. So make sure that you spend time on your networking, but networking with purpose and with the right people. So yes, so this one was, again, the council had purchased this a couple of years previous to me for £300,000, there or thereabout, and they'd restored the top floor, so they'd spent about £100,000 restoring the top floor, and they actually occupied the top floor, but they didn't have any money to do the rest of the building. But their contract for regeneration, because it was new heritage, was I think it was 2 or 3 years left for them to spend the money that they had available, etc. And they wanted to stay there, but they also wanted the building to be occupied. So I actually negotiated this one about 48% below market value. So I purchased it. It's a huge building. I purchased it for £155,000, and I negotiated with them such a discount because I allowed them to stay on the top floor for the 3 years for peppercorn rent. So they were happy because they got to stay there. They got some money back in the pot as well. As you know, most councils are struggling, always are actually. So always make sure you negotiate, and they have no idea how to value property. So definitely a good source of deals for you to get into that relationship or those relationships. So we spent £100,000 doing the restoration of the 2 floors. Oh, it was 3, but it's a split level. And we got that property valued at £348,000. It's probably worth a hell of a lot more than that now. But again, it's about recognizing problems. We actually occupy this building, so it's where I am now. You can see. We occupy this building. It became our head office, and that was the purpose of me buying this building. But again, I still pulled capital out. I've retained the asset cash flows. The council, New Heritage, have moved out on the top floor now. It was a really, really good, solid deal, but again, came down to relationships. It did take me a long time to buy this one because it was over 3 different titles, and it's kind of like, if you read the history of this building, and I always do Heritage Open Day with all of my listed buildings. Again, you get grant funding for that. If you own listed buildings and you're opening them up to the public twice a year, you get £10,000 to £15,000. Which just helps with the upkeep and maintenance of your assets, really. I do love history, and I love working with listed buildings, but there's reasons why I do the things I do. But yeah, this one was originally a coach house, and then they built the Crown Hotel around it, which is very bizarre. But if you were to ever come to the building, it's all over loads of different split levels, and it goes up and down and in and out. And yeah, it's definitely a building you can get lost in, but absolutely stunning building. This one here is Wellington. So this was just a standard residential house, which we converted into a 6-bed HMO. This is an Article 4 area now as well, so there's planning involved with this one. The project costs on this was £60,000. This was about 5 years ago. And I do own my own construction company, so if you are using any of the costs that I'm actually putting forward, I'd add on top of that, because of course I buy in bulk materials, and I'm using my own employees to do the conversions. So it does cost me less, I guess, unless you can get me cheaper than that. And then if you can, definitely call me. I'd like to talk to you. But the rental income on this one, just a small HMO, was £33,000 a year, and just over, and £320,000 property value. That was a nice money in, almost money out deal, and I retain that in my asset. I very much buy to hold. So while I do flip and I do development, majority of the stuff I do are commercial conversions, but they are built to rent as well. So I do own the majority, or retain the majority of my assets, because I genuinely do believe that the real wealth in property is holding property long term. So this one is one of my passion projects. It's the project I'm working on at the moment as well. So this is a museum. So this one again was owned by the council, and they wanted me to restore it, but they again have no idea how to value property. But this is just over 15,000 square feet, this building. Absolutely stunning building. There are problems with it. So there was a light dome on the roof that's been compromised when they removed it and put a flat roof in. It was listed partway through me buying it, which was a bit of a ball ache, but also a blessing in disguise, because you don't pay business rates on empty listed buildings. building. So whoever thought they were screwing me over there really did me a favor, and listed buildings what I focus on. So yeah, thanks very much. Karma's the ultimate bitch, isn't it? But yeah, with this one, I used to go there as a child. I absolutely love this museum. I am I love history, buildings, history, everything. So this, that's my son Jack. I used to take him there as well. This was the last time it was open. So he's 15 years old now. And that was the last few days that it was open, which I took him to see before. And I always used to say to my husband, because I drive past this building every day, that I would love to own that in my portfolio. And then law of attraction, I guess, the council brought it to me and asked if I'd like to buy it. And if I would buy it, what would they do with it? They actually had quite a bit of interest in this. And originally when I looked at it as well, and you'll see from the outside in a minute, I did look at it as commercial conversion. Sometimes you do just fall into that kind of mindset. But I really wanted to retain it for public use. So that was what I wanted to do. So again, I did a feasibility report. I looked at what was local, how we could tie in with the local attractions. I own hotels and serviced accommodation units that are local as well. So I know that, there's a real demand for short-term stays here, and there are tourist attractions. But the town was decimated in the 1990s because of a large shopping centre that opened up a few miles up the road. And really, this is a prime location of the town, but the footfall is not that great. So I had to do a whole feasibility and business report on this to get this negotiated at £200,000, which is a phenomenal price. And again, if you can buy anything below £50 per square foot, then you can make money pretty much anywhere, really. And we paid, I think it works out to something like £15 per square foot, which is pretty decent. And so, but this building came with lots of problems. So yes, it came to me because of the relationship, and obviously I showed interest in it. But this one really, it is a museum. It is now a Grade 2 listed building, and it had a covenant on there to state that it could only be used as a museum. So there's problem number one. Obviously, it doesn't work as a museum, which is why it closed down, because I was probably the only person that visited it. But so I didn't want to. It is a commercial decision, and while it is a passionate, a passion project, I always make money out of what I do. At the end of the day, that's what I'm in this business for, and ultimately that's what I focus on. So I actually exchanged on this building subject to planning permission to secure it to me. There were quite a few other people that were sniffing around, and some of them had offered in excess of £400,000 for this building. So it genuinely did come down to my plan with this building and two others that I ended up purchasing, which the council owned as well, which is why they could justify why I was purchasing it at such a low price. And that was down to the regeneration of the area. That I'm bringing a £4 million project to the area spend, and it was across three different buildings. But this one, once I got the covenant removed, which again was illegal, nightmare, but done and doable, and definitely a problem you can solve. Again, a lot of people walked away because of that. And the feasibility research that I did and going out to the public, what did they want? We were actually converting it into an entertainment quarter. So this will become indoor food huts, cricket sixes, inflatonation, mini golf, laser quest, escape rooms. The basement has or will have escape rooms. I'm currently on this project at the moment. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, something different as well for me. And again, as we know, I'm a bit of a psycho and need to keep pushing myself forward all the time and do different things. So I'm really excited about this project and what it holds for the regeneration, the people of Dudley. And within this postcode, without these buildings that I'm talking to you about now, I've got about £12 million worth of property. So I'm heavily invested in this area. So it makes sense for me to help regenerate this area. And just within this postcode, as I said, I'm one by one property doing that. So yeah, the project cost is going to be around the 1,200. We do have grant funding available to us, and that's up to 70% of that restoration. I haven't decided if I'm going to use grant funding yet or not, but it's nice to have that option. The rental income on this will be £300,000 per year once it's done, and the expected value is around that 3 million. But if I was to sell this now in auction, I've solved the problem. So I secured the asset by exchanging subject to planning. That was based off the relationship and the business plan that I put in place for the regeneration, the jobs, etc., that I'm bringing to the area, and the benefit to the community and the people locally. They really brought on with my plan for that, and of course, you know, I solved those problems, and now they are solved. If I was to put it in auction or even to just sell it on the open market, I'd probably make about £400,000 just with what I've done. Now it's taken, you know, from the very first conversation, 2 years to then exchanging and getting the planning in place a further year. So 2 years in total, but since I financially committed myself and got the deal, exchanged 12 months just to get to that point. So it's not for the faint-hearted. It does take time, but it's a really good project. And again, down to the relationships, but also recognizing the opportunity and being confident you've got the teams in place and the knowledge to be able to solve the problems. So this is what I'm working on at the moment. So that's the outside there. That's the fun city. So this is the entertainment quarter. So there's a building here called the Diversity Building, which is the Royal Keep. That's currently offices that's being converted into an apart hotel. The Glass House, which is here, the council and heritage, actually, I worked on that building about 10 years ago. So BHB, who are my architects, actually restored that building. So it was a fire station. It was owned by the council. It was a fire station, and they converted it into a bar and restaurant, a very nice bar and restaurant. It's a really nice place, and a really nice part of the town as well. It has a really nice feel to it. It is a conservation area, beautiful buildings, etc. My car park's just over the back here. With Priory House, so that services or will service this business as well. But I knew that they'd spent £1 million on this property basically, and I ended up buying it for just over £400,000. And again, the reason I was able to buy it at that amount is because they brought into my vision for these 3 properties combined together, and the regeneration of that particular postcode and Stone Street Square being a prominent place within the town, and wanting someone that's experienced and worked with the council for a long time to develop and restore those buildings. So heritage. So the reason I work with heritage is I am a history freak. I do love history. But again, the reason I sit on the boards is, you know, I get to see the at-risk register immediately. I can see any new additions to that first before it kind of goes to the public domain. We can highlight and put buildings on that list, and anything that's on there is quite likely to get grant funding as well, which, you know, if you are interested in doing listed buildings, it's definitely something that you should be looking at. But again, not only do I love the history and restoring the buildings and bringing them back to life, and they are something special about, you know, listed buildings, and they are very different, and they each have a different story to tell, of which I absolutely adore and enjoy. And I do find you know, a lot of passion in these types of buildings. But the reason is because they are good tangible assets as well. You know, if you've got the right teams, the right people, and you understand how to restore, maintain, and work with heritage, they can be a real asset to you. There's lots and lots of funding available for heritage buildings, and they do hold a different value, I think, to your standard or normal new builds, because they do have that character, they do have that history. But of course, it is a legal responsibility as well, because if you do own listed buildings, you are responsible for those buildings. And if there's anything that happens to them, it could be a jailable offence. So you've got to make sure you know what you're doing. And these projects can take a hell of a lot longer than your standard projects as well. And of course, can cost a lot more money as well to do, because if you are restoring listed buildings, you're having to do it with the original craftsmanship and all things like that. So listed building consent and lots of different loopholes that you have to jump through, but all doable and all definitely worth it. This is the oldest building that I've worked on to date. So this was, it's actually, this building is built on a medieval leper hospital, which is a little bit random and very strange. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. But I'm working on this with the Heritage Trust. So I'm on the steering group for this. But this is 10 years into this project, and a spade hasn't even, well, actually, I tell a lie. About 2 months ago, a spade did go into the ground. But it is on a scheduled ancient monument. So it definitely comes with its problems, but this has planning permission to be converted into residential. And then the council will actually be buying it off the trust as well. So just a few other things then. So I always say I am also, and people always say to me, you know, what do you focus on? What do you do? And while we're still on strategies, I'll kind of cover this off. My answer is anything that makes me money, basically. I'm not precious about what strategy. Yes, I'm classed as a HMO queen and a serviced accommodation expert, if you can call anybody that. But that's just because I do volume in those types of strategies. But I actually do everything. And I'm always keeping my mind open and focusing on what's going to be making me money. And I always recognize the opportunity within every deal, and I'm not precious to stay with one deal or business model. You know, I invest in people's businesses, I invest in other people's projects. And obviously I'm still developing and doing my own as well. So I would always say I'm a problem solver. That's what I do best. I'm very good at negotiation. That's my favorite thing to do. I love the thrill of that chase. But I am also so many other things as well. So I'm just going to cover a few of those on. I mean, first and foremost, I'm a mom at the end of the day. You know, all of this was to build a legacy for my son and future generations, and just watching him from a child be included in our business. And you know, I do viewings, go to site meetings, and he'd be strapped to my chest as a baby. And then when he was walking, Gilliam, I'll probably share this with you for your daughter, I did you know, little visual checklists for him, where it'd have a house and then a toilet and then a smelly or a swirly carpet. And he had to go running around the house and ticking off the boxes to say how many toilets there was and all things like that. So it's always been about family, and I've always included him in that. And he is and will be an awesome investor and a phenomenal human being. I'm really excited to see. I hope he does go into property, but whether he does or not, he's the sole heir of our entire and is the beneficiary of the trusts and everything. So we'll see. But he, a couple of years ago during COVID, actually placed an offer on a commercial to residential conversion. Obviously, I funded it, but it was a 30% return on investment. So I think he's going to do okay, and I reckon we'll probably see him at the awards, Gilliam, for Young Property Investor of the Year. He does attend every year as well, so he's the only child there in a little black tie and suit. Yeah,
I'll keep an eye. I'll keep an eye in the judging process as long as he found his deal on Property Filter. It's all
Brilliant. Well, yes, I'll get him on there to find it 100%. But yes, I'm also part of the hit Sky TV show, Property Elevator. Absolutely loving that because, of course, it is an opportunity to give back and give value from the show and the deals that are presented to us. So any of you that have deals, we've just finished as filming series 7, and that's out in June. However, we will be filming series 8, so keep an eye on the website and our social media pages, and find your deals on Property Filter and then come and pitch them in Property Elevator. But yes, absolutely loving being part of the show because it gives me the opportunity to actually invest in other people's deals. And I had people that trusted and invested in me as well. So it feels like a really great place to be. And yes, I'm making money, but also I do feel like that I'm helping other people on their journey as well. And then this one, I think Jean is gone now, hasn't she? Or she is somewhere. But this is our hard hats to heels. Sorry, guys, this is for the girls. But we do so much for the guys and girls, but this is just for the females in the room. We set up hard hats to heels really so that we could just create a good, solid community for women. And we launched our first event last month, which was a phenomenal success, and we had unbelievable feedback. And the vibe in the room and the quality of people in the room, and it was just special. It was so special. So for anyone that wants to kind of join us, feel free to scan the QR code on screen. We do alternate to daytime events and evening events, although the evening events are very, very, I think very much a girls' night out as well, because after we've finished with all of our networking, we then pop along to my sports bar and continue the party there, of which, guys, you are allowed to come to that part of it. So you can join us in the pub afterwards if you want. And then my good friend, Sam Cook. Do you know Sam, Gilliam?
yeah, very much, yeah.
Yeah, he's a really, really good friend of mine. Really like him. Good, solid guy. If you're not reading Blue Bricks magazine, make sure that you do. He has some awesome guests in there, some really good pieces. He always says that my piece was the best and the only one he didn't have to edit, actually, which I'm really proud of. But he's asked me to be part of their judging panel for the property awards, of which I'm really, really excited about. So either nominate yourself or someone else, or come along and just join in the celebrations so that we can celebrate, the stars of 2024. And it's a great networking opportunity as well. And again, rubbing the shoulders with the right people. So if you haven't booked your tickets, make sure you do. I'm not charging him commission for that either. He just is a real good, genuine guy, and the awards is going to be an awesome night. But that's it, really. Hopefully from that talk, you know a little bit more about me. There's probably a hell of a lot more you could know, but I've tried to kind of pin out over the last 22 years some of the things that I've done wrong, but really wanted to highlight to you that there is really nothing special about me at all. All the deals that I do, I just solve problems, and I do it very well, and I make money. So I'd always say just put a stake in the ground, get on with it. 90% of the job is showing up, hold yourself accountable, and go out there and make it happen.
Hayley, thank you so much. Thank you very much. So we have going to take a few questions. I had someone actually who couldn't attend today, and was quite keen to ask you some questions. Well, I'll go through to these. So it's Kim asking, what advice would you share to anyone starting in property today? With your hard to heels, what are your experience as a woman in a male-dominated industry, and also what's your aspiration with the hard and heels? So that's three questions there. When you're starting, women in the industry, and aspiration for the event.
Okay, being a woman in the industry now is very different to what it was 22 years ago. So when I did first start out, there wasn't really that many women in the industry, and a majority of the women were actually in staging, decoration, finance, or sales and lettings, not really developing or refurbing, dealing with builders and things like that. So I think my experience 20 years ago, or 20 odd years ago now, give away my age, was very different. That it was extremely hard. So I had to work a hell of a lot harder than any guy in the room to create those relationships. I had to be 10 times better to get the opportunities, or to even be listened to sometimes. So, but I very much use that to kind of just propel myself off. I work hard anyway. I roll my sleeves up. I've always kind of said, it's not about being a woman in the industry. I don't see it as a man's world. It's my world. It's what I do. It's what I am, and I thoroughly enjoy and take passion out of every project that I do. I love the learning. I love the challenge. So I surround myself now with the right people, but yeah, it was awful actually. Just starting out, I'd get sexually abused verbally, touched up by estate agents inappropriately, even if it was, it was awful. But I'm glad to say, or I hope to say, that it is better now. And while we do have a really long way to go, and there's always improvements that can be made, it's about surrounding yourself with guys that actually respect you as a business person and don't recognize you as a woman. Because ultimately, it shouldn't be down to sex, it should be down to capability, and I'm more than capable.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Question two was, the first question was around getting started, because there's a lot to say about where you are now and the longevity. I think the first thing I wrote down, and I've got a full page of notes, is around longevity, 2002, it's like back in 2002, and going at it step by step, starting with the buy-to-let, etc. What would you say now to people starting out?
I'd say start with the end in mind. So approach it as a business, because that's exactly what it's going to be. But it really comes down to what are you looking to achieve out of property? You need to answer that question first yourself. If it is just a pension pot and you're happy in your job and you're not looking to, reduce your hours or replace your income, then your approach, speed and risk profile is going to be very different. So first of all, I'd say to you, get yourself educated always. And that's not a pull. Yes, I do own a training organisation. However, we put an awful lot of stuff out there for free, and so do lots of other training organisations and YouTube channels. There's lots of stuff that you can go and have a look at now to have a good understanding of what you want to do in property. So first of all, I'd say get yourself educated and understand why you're moving into the industry, because it is a phenomenal industry to be in, but it's not easy. It's going to take hard work. It's going to be time consuming, and it's not going to, it's going to be worse before it gets better. You've got to be prepared to take that ride, I would say. So I would say always kind of under promise and over deliver, hold yourself accountable, set good tangible goals, and smash them really. I think, yeah, just understanding where you want to go. I'm not sure what else I can say. Get yourself educated, understand why you're doing it, put a plan in place, and then hold yourself accountable. Show up every single day. There will be days where you kind of ask yourself, why do I do this? And I've had those days this week, remind me again, why do I do what I do? Because it's never going to be easy, but anything that's easy, is it really worth it? So it's all worth it in the end. But it'll probably take you longer to get to where you want to be. But it'll definitely feel a lot quicker than you anticipated. As I always say to people, people see me as a successful, female or person in the property industry now, but it took over 2 decades to get to where I am today. But I wouldn't change any of it.
Mm-hmm. That leads quite well to another question, and then we'll jump back on your aspiration for the network. So Roger was asking, how do you personally deal with the obstacles, the challenges, and the setbacks, of the projects?
I rock in a corner quite a lot. No. So every problem is solvable. We come up against problems every single day, new challenges, new issues. It's just about being problem solving orientated. So I am a problem solver, so I'd be worried if there wasn't problems, to be honest. I'd probably struggle finding something to do. So I'd say just be in that solution orientated mindset, recognize that there's a problem. It'd be silly not to, but then think outside the box and think about, well, how can I change this? How can I come out of this? What can I do to improve this situation? Don't focus on the problem itself. Focus on the solution or finding that solution.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Back to your hard hat and heels aspiration. So it was the first session last week, and I think also Mayura was commenting that she was thinking of doing a female network as well. Maybe if you had some advice for her, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'd say go for it. There's a real vibe around a movement around females in the industry, and I actually didn't know how successful it was going to be. It was a group of women, local women, that just decided in the bar one night that we think it would be great to have a female networking group, and a great place for us to be able to showcase good, solid women, introduce them to the right people, and network, in a different space. And prior to launching our Hard Hats to Heels, I'd never been to an all-female networking event. Majority of the people that I work with are male, and over the years, predominantly have been male as well. So it was really nice to be able to be part of that, and just create that safe space. And the vibe in the room is so much different when it's all women. We had a great time. We had 2 awesome speakers, and the energy and positivity was just phenomenal. I cannot wait for our next event. I'm so super excited about it. But we are pushing it out to the rest of the UK. So we will be franchising out to the rest of the UK. But if you're thinking about doing it, definitely just put a stake in the ground and get on with it, because I definitely think you'll have a good uptake. And if anything, you're just surrounding yourself with good, solid women that are there to support you.
Awesome. So that's answered the question around where this is going. So that's awesome. Thanks. Is it a scoop? Are we the first to hear about
it? Yeah,
she were. We're always quite lucky. I've got a question actually on which came in the chat as well earlier privately, is what makes a good a winning pitch at Property Elevator?
Okay. And so people always ask me this. And if you ever apply for Property Elevator, I put the pitch program together. So in terms of what a good solid proposal looks like, how you need to present the deal. So if anybody wants that, I'm more than happy to share it with you, Gilliam, and you can pass it out to your audience. But a good solid pack with information about the property, but really showing the opportunity and then showcasing yourself. And that doesn't necessarily mean to say that you're experienced, but we very much buy into the people. Quite often the deals that are pitched don't come up, but the relationship is there and future deals will. Um, so it's not always just about, the bottom line, although obviously we do focus on that, but showing good solid comparables, show that you've recognized the opportunity, you understand the audience and the product you've got to put back to the market, and then showcasing your own skills, experience, and why you'd like to work with us as investors.
Awesome, that's brilliant. Have you got any sort of closing sentiment for today? And we'll wrap up.
No, not really. No, I'd say closing out today, as I said, nothing special about me. I roll my sleeves up, get on with it, and just do the job, showing up, putting the time in, and the effort, working hard. And yes, I am successful at what I do, but it has come over time. So it is about the little things you can do every single day to make a difference for your own future and your families as well. So just put that stake in the ground, as I said, and get on with it.
Awesome, that's brilliant. The secret of health, wealth, and happiness. Work hard, like who knew? So that's really awesome. So thank you so much, Hayley. Thank you. It's been great to have you today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, Hayley.
So, yeah, thank you for joining us today. So do reach out if to one of the network Hayley was talking about. I might pop them in the Facebook group as well later. In the meantime, visit propertyfilter.co.uk, log on to your Property Filter account, check out the deal blueprint where you can define your goldmine area, engage with motivated sellers, assess properties in seconds, load your pipeline and make deals, have an endless supply of deals, join the top 1% and become a high achiever deal finder. I hope you enjoyed today's Deal Finder Corner like I did. I'm looking forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you so much. Thank you, Hayley. Thank you all.